Crucial to a better understanding and development of my work was a Henry Moore Institute Research Fellowship awarded in 2013. Reading constructivist theorist Boris Arvatov, who elaborated on the notion of every worker constructing the world through objects that leave his workbench. Arvatov noted how these objects might be subsequently formed elsewhere through public consumption. I drew parallels between Arvatov's utilitarian objects and a contemporary production of language. Besides making work, all of us read, write, and speak, providing access to that work. More recently, I was invited by Rosie Cooper to perform in response to a body of work in the home of the late concrete and sound poet Bob Cobbing. Confronted with the unarchived mass, I proposed something less visibly public, yet more exemplary for my work with utilitarian access. Do you know how much that cost me? These are the first entries in an inventory of material removed from Bob Cobbing and Jennifer Pike's last home at 89A Petherton Road, London N52QT, following Jennifer Pike's admission into care in 2013. The inventory's name, N156NT, refers to the current location of the material at the home of William Cobbing. Until further funds are available, the inventory will be collectively compiled by visitors to the archive, producing a portrait of interests. Descriptions are written of items in return for access to them. The catalogue is accessible at n165nt.uk using an interface developed by Thomas Bush. Optimal screen size and legibility restricts each description to 50 words. Exceptions are made, for example, when correspondence extends to over several pages, but should be kept to multiples of 50. Abbreviation is encouraged with a list of these kept and added to at n156nt.uk/abbreviations. How am I doing for time, Rosie? That's good. Starting this writing with my interest in Cobbing's unseen administrative qualities versus his wild, anarchist poet's public image, I developed my methods through reading and describing his correspondence written to publish the words of his peers through the Poetry Society, Better Books, Writers' Forum, and the London Filmmakers Co-op. This evening I've narrowed this down to correspondence from 1983 between Bob Cobbing and mainly Jennifer Pike with the GLC. What's most interesting is Jennifer Pike's description and justification of how they live and how they work and how they don't make a distinction between life and work. And with the recent increase in administration and quantification of artistic practices and lives, my work positions the artist as self-service provider. I produce structures for the writing, favouring the everyday reading, writing, and spoken exchange of the administrative side of artistic practice, often unheeded in favour of a traditional object-based representation of work. In notes to this application, this quite successful application, I stated a preference for us to simply read the work, later adding the inevitable into those empty spaces of additional information enabling a reading of the work. My work investigates the concrete qualities of what is written, that additional information, while publishing emphasizing the public's co-production of meaning and value around the work of others. N15 6NT 1983 GLC 001, 4th of May 1983. From GLC, Head of Housing Services, B.R. Steele, M.A. DPhil, County Hall, HGLDO, to Mr. R. Cobbing, 262 Randolph Avenue, London, W9, housing reference number L/A11020958, informing tenants of their registration for alternate accommodation, inviting them to update the Council of Circumstances and Wishes at the Mutual Exchange Bureau. N15 6NT 1983 GLC 02, 10th of May 1983, letter to B.R. Steele from R.W. Cobbing in response to a letter of N15 6NT 1983 GLC 001 stating no wish for the proposed alternative accommodation and setting out history of renovation and rehousing since 1981. The proposal is made to vacate specific parts of the premises where interior renovation might be needed. N15 6NT 1983 GLC 003, 1983, date as postmark. Card from GLC G32, Head of Housing Services, to RC JP, stating that communication of 5/10/1983, reference L/CDO/LKM/A11020958, N15 6NT 1983 GLC 002, is receiving attention. N15 6NT 1983 GLC 04 1-5, letter from JP to GLC Miss Fitzgibbon. Mention is made of JP's kiln, deemed a fire hazard, necessary and considerably safer than an open domestic fire. Letter ends abruptly and based on N15 6NT 1983 GLC 005, probably unsent. Subsequently, letters speak of numerous unfinished attempts, hence representation by Paddington, Advice and Law. N15 6NT 1983 GLC 05 1-5, 1983. Copy of N16 5NT 1983 GLC 004. Abrupt end is continued by hand. N15 6NT 1983 GLC 008 1983, letter from BC JP to GLC. Supplement N15 6NT 1983 GLC 002, wife's letter enclosed, not present, 262 Randolph Avenue, acts as HQ for 3 organisations receiving letters, calls, callers, about 3,500 a year. Organisations internationally referenced in books. And a move in same street would minimise corrections to these books. Typed sheet and carbon copy adds all work for said organisations is voluntary. N15 6NT 1983 GLC 011, 27th of September 1983. Letter from Ken Livingstone, member of the GLC for Paddington, leader of the council, to Mr. Cobbing, following consultation with the head of housing services in acknowledgement of recent correspondence 10/583 and 15/583, and apologising for delay in responding, though pointing out that points are under consideration and that officers have visited Mr. Cobbing to further discuss particular housing needs. The letter confirms that numbers 252 to 262 Randolph Avenue are included in the council's rehabilitation programme, and while works are being carried out, tenants cannot be in occupation. The assertion is also made that no one representing the housing service may have said that this work was only external. It's assured that suitable accommodation will be found for Mr. and Mrs. Cobbing's specialised printing and other equipment. A temporary move is not possible since the conversion of the basement will produce 4-bedroom dwellings. Mr. and Mrs. Cobbing are acknowledged as 2 people. Head of Housing Services will be in touch. N15 6NT 1983 GLC 016, 10th of February 1984, Paddington Advice and Law Centre, reception to Head of Housing Services, GLC, correction of draft, N15 6NT 1983, GLC number 15. N15 6NT 1983, GLC 17, 1-3, 3rd of March 1984, draft of a letter later described as letter A, from JP to GLC Mrs. F, explaining the legal tone of the Paddington Advice and Law Centre, 2nd of February 1984, and expressing the wish to be cooperative. Quote, "The flat is our way of living. Various distinctions are made between descriptions of the living and professional and non-professional working situations of the couple, most of which are made with no financial consideration. This is all more bearable than having no knowledge of their future accommodation. GLC might not acknowledge their artistic contributions, but might acknowledge psychological and spiritual discomfort of this hiatus. Unannounced and impolite meetings with various officers, mother-in-law, since other members of the family pay for the nursing home, the reason for them not having her back is financial, but to save them costs. However, the current situation has made this unthinkable. Quote, "My husband and his mother seem hell-bent on destroying each other for the best possible motives, let alone consider a long-term solution." Almost there, N16 5NT 1983, GLC 025, 5th of May 1984, letter from GLC Housing Head of Housing Services, PP, Mrs. B.S. Kenny to Mr. and Mrs. Cobbing, summarising meeting of 4/12/1984 and possible outcomes. Maisonette, lower and ground floors, Highbury, N5. Offered. Recommended that Mr. and Mrs. Cobbing visit to gain indication of the most desirable property that might be offered. N15 6NT 1983, GLC 27 as postmark. Various notes held together with pen. One page of notes taken during telephone conversation. Two pages typed and CC. Confirmation of moving dates and addresses and notes of 3. 1 page, quote, for removal costs £240 by Tiger Trucks Limited, NW6. N15 6NT 1983 GLC 28, letter from British Telecom to Mr. R.W. Cobbing in acknowledgement of application for telecommunications service at 89A Petherton Road, London, N5 2QT, number 01-226-2657. Thank you.
Concrete poetry, a few words and several pictures. Between poetry and painting, in 1965 was the first London exhibition of concrete poetry. And this year, 2015, is its 50th anniversary. Concrete poetry serves to examine what happens to language through visual presentation and what happens to an image that is simultaneously endowed with literary meaning. Here are 6 examples, each one in a different language. The presentation of the text amplifies its meaning. The concrete poem is an experience rather than a description. It is a picture as well as a text, and that's why the exhibition was called Between Poetry and Painting. What is also important about the movement of concrete poetry is that it is the first international art movement. Now, concrete poets from top left to right. Henri Chopin, Unknown Soldier on Fire. Juan Carlos Jiménez de Berasategui, an anti-war poem. Joshua Reichardt, Sator Arepotenet Opera Rotas, the Latin palindrome, meaning, he who guides the plough sows the seed. Mary Ellen Salt, Forsythia. Kitason Okatua, surrealist and concrete poet from Japan. The poem is called White. Gerard Rühme, Bleiben, remain, stay. The term concrete poetry was coined by Eugen Gomringer in 1954. It's a term derived from Max Bill's Konkrete Kunst. Gomringer thought of concrete poetry as the means of creating order. His single-word poem, Silencio, has been discussed and written about at length. Gomringer is German. The poem is in Spanish and written within the decade of the end of the World War II. The poem is simple, and yet there is so much to be said about it, and that is true of the majority of concrete poems. There are no photographs of the exhibition because none of us had cameras. Some concrete poems were shown in black and white enlargements mounted on walls. Originals and small prints were pinned onto boards of large screens covered in soft board and fixed at right angles. The screens were painted in red, blue, or dark blue. This image doesn't tell you very much, but I can show you a few of the works in the exhibition. Like every art movement, concrete poetry had its antecedents, going back, in this case, to the 17th century and George Herbert's Easter wings, often printed sideways in the shape of birds' wings. There is the mouse's tail from Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, 1865. Also, one of the most beautiful poems by Apollinaire, Il pleut, 1918. It rains women's voices. And here are some more recent examples of works by artists in the exhibition. Dom Sylvester Woodall, with his translation of the Basho haiku and Cat's Cradle made by John Furnival. Seiichi Nikuni, himself, and his poem Touch, here in a later version. John Furnival with his French poem about color. Augusto de Campos, member of the Neugandres group, his 1957 poem starting with A Ball of Yarn. Jiří Kolář referred to his collages as the end of words, using cut-up print to create textures, or, as is the case with his self-portrait, making combinations from 2 or 3 photographs. He called works of this sort prolage, prolongations of the image. Max Spencer, an important member of the concrete poetry movement, was a philosopher and writer. He came to London for the exhibition and asked me what I was going to do next. I told him that I didn't know, wasn't sure, so he suggested that I should look into computers. And this, of course, I did, and that led to Cybernetic Serendipity, the exhibition about the computer and the arts, which was shown at the ICA's new premises here in the mall, in a space 10 times the size of the gallery at 17 Dover Street, where we mounted between poetry and painting. And now you will hear a recital of a poem by an important member of the concrete poetry movement, Bob Cobbing. He organized recitals of this poem with 7 people who performed it as a canon. The first performance took place during the exhibition. This is what the original poem looks like, but you will receive clearer copies for the reading.
Is that on? Oh, yes. So, I have a film that I did on Super 8 of Bob in his house in Pemberton Road in about year 2000. Unfortunately, I can't find it. However, in the process of trying to find it, I looked at unlabelled film, and the first one I put on is the one I'm going to show now, which I filmed in 2004. So Bob never saw it, but I was doing a tour of Sweden, and this is a Swedish film. Because Bob spent a long time in Sweden in about the 1960s, I thought that it could be considered to be a bit of Bob's memory of Sweden, and it's going to be unaccompanied, and it's just 3 minutes long, and it's a Super 8 film that I did anyway. I'm going to put it on with no further ado. Thank you. Oh, my name's Hugh Metcalfe.
Okay. Well, I'm Oscar, and this is Henrik, and we're going to be doing a sort of a rework of an essay and voice piece that we performed at Chelsea Symposium about 6 months ago, along with some guitar accompaniment. It's called Worm, and it starts like this. He chronicles the buried pavement at Bewley Abbey, Roman villas at Chedworth and Brading, the remains of Roman town at Silchester, the nature of debris by which remains are covered, the penetration of the tessellated floors and walls by worms, the subsidence of the floors. They were indifferent to shouts. If care was taken that the breath did not strike them, when placed on a table close to the keys of a piano, which was played as loudly as possible, they remained perfectly quiet. Although they are indifferent to undulations in the air audible by us, they are extremely sensitive to vibrations in any solid object. When they are extremely sensitive to vibrations in any solid object, the pots containing 2 worms, which had remained quite indifferent to the sounds of the piano, were placed on this instrument, and the notes C and the bass clef was struck, both instantly retreated into their burrows. I started about a year ago, all of this, and now it's become apocryphal. It's something that we all came to laugh about. I've been ill. I was more ill than I thought I was. One night in the pub, I'd gone to the toilet, and when I finished, I went to wash my hands there, in the grouting between the basin and the tiles. I saw a little white worm. It moved. It was wriggling out, and I stared and stared at the worm. Stared, I realized, so hard that it took up all my vision. There was nothing else, and nothing but the worm wriggling in that way of theirs. And then it is an orgiastic way of using language. The proximity of holes and passages to one another allow a permissiveness bordering on the perverted. The process of reading the collage text is like that of muscle building. Any sense of form or coordination comes from the concerted, sweat-beading effort to pull out the relations and put them back together. Bob Cobbing's poem
worm starts with rust, moth, fungus, mildew. They live underground and come to the surface through a system of burrows of their own making. The manner in which worms seize objects, their power of suction. You look at one through a microscope and it looks as if they are formed of armoured plates. Worms make space between things. Their action is paratactical. Parataxis is a method of construction, of constructing text that is defined by the lack of coordinating junctions. Paratactic style adds or accumulates, piles things on top of each other, seemingly without shared relation, without any point. In a way, it comes close to representing a mode of conversational speech where people flit between one subject and another in sharp, hairpin bends, dismissing the same time, the proper order of past, present, and future. It is a portrait of distraction, a way in which the mind follows thoughts in no particular order, an image of experience in process, something that does not know its destination. A caesura is an extended pause and a musical notation for choral work, and is written as a comma that floats above the top of the 5 lines. The work of Darwin's worms is in the producing of a heady, vertiginous oxygenation of language, where the gaps between things, between sentences, and between people swell with an excess of meaning, the stench of rot.
I still dearly miss him. He was like my father, my best mate, basically. I have, because we got short time, a piece that we never even performed, I think, called News Item, which I think was done with John Brown, was it? I'm not sure. News Item. Pills are now available, enabling sleep to be performed at a heightened rate. By taking one primer pill and following this an hour later with a second or exciter pill, 6 hours sleep may be compressed into the space of 4. Thus saving valuable... Guess what word it is? Guess what word it is? Valuable... Guess... Time, ladies and gentlemen, yes. Thus saving valuable time. Other functions may also be speeded up, and the same process of primer followed by exciter pill taken by those attending enables dances to be extended with no consequent increase in time. To the tune of 33 RPM records, played at the speed of 45 RPM, several more dances may be enjoyed in the space of the evening. It is expected that other users will shortly be announced. Well, anyway. Oh, yes, because there's a bit of stuff about film. I've found one here about the out of the spores of the shining tar, splendid, permanent, and white, flesh to the denuded. This one was on the opposite page of the one I really wanted. Come back, sir. Come back. Sensations of the retina and silence. On the shore, a yellow dog unstrands the fertile image of decay. A plain white wall, pensive head, solid and impenetrable, as flower or swan or ghost. Medusa images, fearful presences, seduces as readily as they bruise. Eye standing at extreme perimeter listens, becomes the medium of the heard, touch, makes it move, returned to motion. Light stepping from its latent anonymity explodes in sound. Thank you. Oh, that's a blank page. Thank you. Bob did a performance at the in Sea and Air. He did at the ICA with the fantastic Bo Gamlin ensemble. And I've never attempted to read this. I've always played the guitar with it. So maybe I'll have a go on the guitar. I didn't know I was going to do a solo. Is it possible to... Ah, yes. Bob, can you hold this piece of paper for me? Yeah. We spent hours in our car, silence, and then we'd get to lunchtime. Time for beer. We rotated. An air in the key of C, taking the air in the key beside... Oh, I'm no good at this. Does someone else want to do it? Anyone? You read it, yeah? And I'll play the guitar.
An air in the key of C, taking the air on the key beside the sea, taking the sea air on the key. All at sea, I've lost the key. The key is in the lock. The landlocked sea has never a key. See, there's an airlock. Look, there's the sea lock. See, the lock of hair. The lock of hair is in the locket. Lock it with the key. It's the airlock of hair in sea and air I see. I see a lock and key. The key is on the lock. The lock has lost its key. Along the shore the key. Are you sure? It's in the key of C. I'm sure the key is C. I see the key and shore. Are you sure and see the key? The key, the sea, the shore. The lock, the key, the locket. The last lock before the sea. I lock the air in C, in the locket, with the key. Another one, okay. Here we have a good, honest, and painful sermon. I'll read it quick. You may prefer a song, but here we have a sermon. Here we have a lecture, a discourse, a reading, a homily, a preachment, a lesson, a disquisition, a predilection, an apologue, a parable. This is pupillary, homiletics, proselyticism, propaganda, preaching, persuasion, conversion, guidance, direction, instruction, edification, initiation, discipline, inculcation, catechization, moral tuition, moral training, an education, an enlightenment, a dissemination, a harangue, a chastening,
2 for Liz
sobering,
Lockhead.
informing, instilling,
A good
imbuing,
fuck makes me feel like
impregnating,
custard.
infixing, infusing,
A good feel makes me
implanting,
fuck like
engrafting,
custard.
indoctrinating.
Good custard
You may
makes
want
me
wine,
feel
women,
like a
mirth, and
fuck.
laughter.
Fuck
It'll
like
be
custard
sermons and
makes me a
soda
good
water the
feel.
day
Makes
after.
fuck me feel like a
I'll
good
be
custard.
sowing
Me
seeds,
like
removing
custard
falsehoods,
makes fuck
disabusing,
a good feel.
inculcating,
Feel like me.
impressing on the memory,
Oh, I'd love to be like
opening
you.
the eyes, cramming in the
Custard
facts,
makes a good
sharpening the
fuck.
wit,
Like a good fuck.
illuminating,
Custard makes me feel.
enlightening,
Custard
enlarging
like
the
a fuck
mind,
makes me feel
instructing,
good.
informing, stuffing with knowledge,
Second one
didactic.
for Liz Lockhead.
It'll be edifying,
A good fuck makes me feel
pedagogic,
like custard. A good
horrific,
screw makes me feel like wet
ditropical,
blancmange.
normative,
A quick
homiletic,
shag makes me feel like jelly.
informational, formative, coercive,
Good sex makes me feel like
developing, licking into shape,
Jam's
pulling
tart.
it,
Intercourse
putting to
makes
school,
me feel
coaching,
like stewed
grounding,
fruit.
cramming,
Rock and roll
priming,
makes me feel like
preparing,
roly-poly.
guiding,
A little lechery
directing,
makes me feel like
opening the
spotted
mind,
dick.
expanding,
Copulation makes me feel like apple crumble.
calculating,
Intimacy makes me feel
interpreting,
like
indoctrinating,
gooseberry
conditioning,
fall.
sermoning, brainwashing. Brilliant.
And that is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to read some poems. That's what I do. I was very influenced for a while by Bob Cobbing's statements on sound poetry. And I started off trying to write my own statements on sound poetry, a kind of response, a reply. It didn't really work out like that. I ended up just writing some poetry. And then I'm going to read that for you. And then I'm going to sneak a couple more in just to round it off. Okay. I've got a sound poem, I've got a sound poem, I've got a sound poem. It's called Bikini. Bikini, bread, bin, breaded bikini. A breaded bikini, bread, bin, breaded bin, bikini, kini, nib, bin, bread, bin. It's a homemade object. Can you hear it? Can you hear it? Can you hear it? Can you hear the whole of it? The shell dangles, the jet legs, the bladder curves, the mystical dinner magic spell, magic orgasm hut, all hairy, hail, Crosier's tinker, palms saying bibble babble. Number 2. I'm at a conference. I'm at a conference. I'm at a conference. I'm at a conference saying the word talent over and over again to another poet who's looking at me with a look that suggests they relate to it, and we hold each other's hands and push each other back and forth, rocking on our heels, saying talent, 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 like talent, 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 tal. ABC is sound. I love you is sound. My hunger is sound. My work is sound. My not work is sound. How much for the charcoal is sound. 14.95 is sound. Are you out of your mind is sound. The thing I made with it is sound. The reactions to it is sound. The interpretations were varied. The company, the sharing, the PowerPoint. My future work is sound. The projects, the payment, the cluster of hungry blue flies buzzing way out at sea. 5 plans for sound poems. From a puny land, plain speech and singing backdrop, whispering, hunchback, black curly beard, red head, red dog, light squitch, gas man down, the mill, the laundrette, and the rabbit spirit. The swelling of the ebb and po, recurring, repeating, building up, down, building up, down, leaves, deep voice, flood. The sword clash precedes a war, an underlay with lots of phrases. 2 women from a different place, singing and speaking, layering, distorted, knocking about between shows, somehow turns into a war chant. From courage and gorgeousness, some sound effects from anagrams of a Hoover and a washing machine. The stages of a building collapsing as a sound poem. Stage 8. How's everyone doing? Fine, yeah, a bit cold. What bit are you looking forward to the most? I'm looking forward to stage 8, the screaming. We're really looking forward to stage 8, the bit where the building screams. The screaming building, when the building screams, when it goes, ooh! Sound poem for finance. Hoc toofanana, hock toofanana, hockanana toofanana, who can hock a toofanana, who can hock a toofinana, who can hock a toofanana, a raccoon can hock a toofanana, a raccoon can hock a toofanana, nana. I don't want to be in this. A raccoon can hock a toofanana, nana, a raccoon can hock a toofanana, a raccoon can hock a toofanana. I don't want to be in this. I don't want to be in this. A raccoon can hock a toofanana, a raccoon can. I don't want to be in this. I'm sad and nervous. Why are you sad? Because I'm nervous. Sound poetry is the politics of fluency. I'm not scared of the butcher or his news. I've got teenage tools and a shovel. Muscular and mighty. Oh, you have acid reflux. No, that's not right. That's not what I said. You do it. You do the work. 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 You do the work next week. Sound poem for the office. Moving around and using steps. Mov nga ron dandu sings tep smo vanga o undand us steps mo vangaro and dusing steps mo vingaro und steps movie garun dandus steps mo ingaru and us steps moving dan do sing step smo inga dan doing steps mo vanga ro and doing steps mo vanga ro under steps moving inga dan dus in steps mo inga ru and us in steps o vanga ro and steps. The girls are talking through the unfinished floor. Through the unfinished floor. The girls are talking through the unfinished floor, through a keyhole. The girls are talking through a keyhole to the next floor. It leaks. It's us. What is us? Through the floor of another voice digging in and practicing varying mists and the germs are calling you out in joke pattern and rough technique. Call love, grizzle love. My argument is spoken into a jug and then this mad net collects it up and proper cycles. Yeah. There's a learnt pain in our speaking. Jesus, it's breaking off into other limbs and insistences. This jug pulls the attempt all over the floor. Who in the sub-channels, in the blush park, in the same bar hears it click the attempt, not the bogged roundup, the attempt claws the roundup, beak the attempt, the roundup mustard, the attempt to round off the plastic ruff, the round neck, this round-necked insect, we neck the next technique, the roundless leak, there's way is open, this way the speech is all over the floor, is open in culture. There's a thought that gets done at the gather, like a safely said knob. Then there's a thought that sweeps along with electric wire, coincidences, legends, pools of spilt stuff, God's mates, increases, bug and fibre, fuzzed movie selves. That's all, thank you very much.
We are Rahel, Kraft and David Toop. I did in fact play here with Bob on his 70th birthday. And I remember we played, myself, Bob and Paul Burwell, we played trio. We hadn't played together for quite a few years. And we had a great sound check. And then I think Bob took one of his exciter pills And everything we decided in the sound check, he completely threw out and read all the poems as if his beard was on fire. And I'm kind of hoping that's not going to happen this evening.
I don't know.
So we're going to perform 6 of Bob's poems, all of which we performed. When I say we, I mean myself, Paul, Bob, and various other people over the time we worked together. And we'll tell you what they are before we play them. So the first one is, I don't know how to pronounce it, I guess, from 1971.
The next piece is called Shamana, and it's from 1971.
So the third poem is the Judith poem from 1971. And yeah. Rahel and I performed this earlier this year at Raven Row, which is why we're here this evening.
To paint his face. He causes me to paint my face. They all cause us to paint our faces. You paint our faces. I paint my own face. And they own paint his face. He throws it away. I throw it far away. You all throw it far. I become sick. I make him sick. He makes me sick. They sleep. He puts them to sleep. They sleep. They sleep. He puts them to sleep.
So the next piece has many pages. We're not going to do all of them, and which order we do them in is, well, quite random actually. It's called Members Only. And this is a later poem from 2000.
Deadline. It's a sick. It's a sick. It's a. It's a. Ion, 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 ionno, ion, ionits, ion, ionits, ion, ionitsa, ion, ionitsa, ionita, ionitsa, 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 te, ion,
Very quiet.
Yeah. This one, it's called Green, and it's from 1965.
This is one of the ABC of sound, which some of you may have heard.
Grey green.
Yep, thank you.